Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B, into another week of quarantine. But I want to start off the show by wishing everyone a happy Mother's Day. I know it's a little bit late. We never do the show on Sundays, but just wanted to give a shout out to my biggest fan, my mom. I hear that it's the highlight of her week, Matt, listening to the show.
Well, of course.
So I know she'll be listening and sharing it. So start off with a little bit of Mother's Day love since we don't have any live sports. But that's not true because we're going to get into the Major League Baseball proposal. But they got into the UFC fights like we've been talking about. Did you watch any of that?
I caught the highlights of it. I like the way the format of they did the test. There was one fighter that did show signs of having it. He did not fight, and the show went on.
And that's something where, at this point, the testing's gotten so good. I know you hear stuff on the news or whatever, but it's gone to the point where they can test for antibodies, and if it's actually in your system, at I think lesser amounts. So they did the test ahead of time, which I thought was awesome, because that kind of gave an announcement. Was it a day or two before the fight?
Yep.
I believe so. You weren't like going into the pay-per-view deciding, do I want to buy this at the last minute? No, I could go ahead and just sit back and know who was going to fight. And I think they lined up a big enough lineup to go ahead and get that down. So I would say right off the bat that you're going to go ahead and look at the different sports and how they did that, and how they went ahead and just picked out things that it did for testing and for scheduling and trying to get all kinds of different procedures in place and build off that for other sports. And so I think that's where you take what happened there, what worked and what didn't, because I still think you had some of the venue workers that went ahead and gave out some of the negative feedback about not being safe or whatever. But now you're going to roll that into what we have on the board for the video watchers. If you want to see the video, you can check us out at YouTube, Southbound Sports, or see what's on Facebook, Southbound Sports. There we go live Tuesday nights around 9 p.m. Eastern. So with the Major League Baseball proposal, they have a bigger scale because you obviously have bigger rosters. And so it's not just like UFC where you can get one ref, two fighters, two or three guys in the corner, and then that's all you need. Realistically, that's all you would need for the fight. You could set up fixed cameras. I know they do some of the moving cameras and things like that. The angles, kind of like the sky cam. That guy operates that way up in the booth. So he's like not down with them anyway. So he could kind of be quarantined in his own little space with the TV guys. But whenever you're looking at Major League Baseball, you're not able to pull that off because you're going to need multiple camera angles. I mean, I know I've watched minor league baseball on television. I don't know how many of the listeners have, but like down here in North Carolina, they have the Durham Bulls on all the time. And they don't have that many camera angles. I want to say 2 or 3. And it is a bit jarring because you're used to being able to see like, oh, if I'm going to watch a game on Fox, I know they're going to show me like all the highlights and the teleprompter stuff, show me like the smart angles of where the pitch goes through the zone and things like that. And I'm thinking with this Major League Baseball proposal, I'm thinking a lot of that gets cut just from the logistics of it and having all of those tech support guys right there on the screen. I mean, that's what's going to be, on the site. You have them running multiple guys, running cameras through the venue. You're trying to do the social distancing. I know they have the media room. They haven't really said anything about that being siloed off. But even trickling down to other venues, we can go through the proposal here. They're going to do an 82-game regular season. So that's half the normal season about. And then they have a start date of early July. So I would assume that this gets rid of the All-Star game. The one thing that I thought was a little bit interesting is they are going to do a universal designated hitter. Do you have thoughts on that, Matt? I know it's a hot topic.
I know that I don't think that it matters, to be honest, because it really doesn't. I don't think it changes the way that a lot of teams are going to be playing it, because when you get to the later World Series rounds, they're using the universal DH anyhow. So I don't think that affects them.
Matt, it's such a weird rule. It would be like in football where they required half the league to have an extra lineman. And then that was like the offense. Like, yo, you have one less weapon on offense. While here in the AFC, you get one extra wide receiver. It's like that's the football equivalent of the designated hitter. They say, well, the pitcher has to hit everyone's on the field or whatever. Or I guess in football, you could say that they had a mandatory 1-2-way player. Like your quarterback also had to play defense, which would also be weird. And so and it's not even for the entire league, Matt. It's like half the league has that rule.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I think if they're going to do that, it makes sense. I mean, to me, if they were going to do that and they were worried about the social distancing stuff and like the players being at risk, you would think that they would have went the opposite route with that, where they would have just had the pitcher hit that way. It was one less bat that needed to be in the lineup, one less person that needs to be checked. If they're doing it based off of your starters or whatever that's going to be tested, or if they're going to be doing everyone that's on the bench.
Well, here's the thing, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. What if it is all a ruse to speed up the game? Because if you go the designated hitter, then realistically, do you even need warm-up pitches in between innings? Like, I know the fielders, like, they all throw a ball around a little bit or whatever, but the pitcher comes out and potentially he's cold because he's sitting on the bench taking a break. What if there's 2 outs and then he, instead of going to sit on the bench, he runs to the bullpen or whatever, and he does his warm-ups down there, and then the next inning just starts? Like, do the fielders have to be warming up their arms every inning? Like, I could see if it's like a college or high school game where you're playing in colder temperatures, but that's one of the big things that could speed up the game. And I know you could argue, well, it's set up, the fans can go back to their seats and do all of this other stuff, but do they really need that? They now have technology where you can just order your food on your phone, and then that guy brings it to you. And we even talked about that with some of the NFL proposals last week. But you don't need the extra time to run to the restroom or whatever. And maybe you do. I don't know. But I really think that that's the one area that they could cut down. They talked about having like a shot clock type clock to speed up the pitching motion. And I agree. That would be 100 times better. And I know a lot of pitchers, they get in that groove, and the batter's the one usually stepping out of the box. And I think if they did away with that, like, yo, you get in the box, that's it. Could you imagine if like you're at a game tying free throw and they do the 10 seconds or whatever, and the guy's like, you know what, timeout. Like, I got to step back and just like brush my shorts. Or I know they don't wear gloves or whatever, but let me adjust my shooting sleeve. And he's just out there adjusting it for no reason, and then he steps back up to the free throw line, because that's what the batter getting out of the box does. So you eliminate all that, the games would speed up to, I mean, it would be a lot quicker. So I think this is going to be a test. And then the thing that we talked about on the show, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, regional alignment to minimize travel, that's a no-brainer. And I think that they had talked about potentially doing, I don't know if this is what they meant, but I saw some people taking it this way, and this is what I thought they meant too, is that you were doing maybe not so much of the AL and NL this year, and you're just going to have like a little pod in your region. So like the Pirates could end up playing the Indians, maybe the Tigers, the Reds, and another team or two, Baltimore, like DC, like that's going to be their schedule / their playoff pod. Because with this, they're also doing local or neutral site games. And my reading into that is a thing that they're putting in place in case one state doesn't open. So like, let's say Missouri doesn't open. And so the St. Louis Cardinals, they have to play their games, I don't know, in Iowa or something like that, like some other site where the state that does open. And that's what I'm thinking that they're going to do with that. You're not going to see like the Pirates playing in Altoona. I mean, maybe you do, but I'm thinking that they're just going to go ahead and push that out. And then, like I had just mentioned, they're going to do an extended playoffs where you're not going to have the 162 games. So instead of having clear-cut playoff teams, because everyone knows the Pirates have been in it a couple times at the All-Star break, they have a good chance. Some of those teams come out cold. You don't know how many guys aren't in shape. Pitcher's not hurt yet or back yet. I mean, they're out for roids, whatever. They come back. Now you have a chance. So to make sure that that doesn't happen or ruin the season by having the Pirates go far in the postseason, Matt, they got to go ahead and extend the playoffs.
Well, that almost follows Washington Redskins line of logic. Every time they would have a lockout or there'd be some kind of issue with the labor union that have a shortened season, Redskins would go to the Super Bowl.
But you sent me that thing where you were talking about the Pirates having the lowest payroll right now. And so if they would come in and push this out and then take a deep run into the playoffs, that would be crazy. And then people would say, oh, well, I mean, hell, if they won the World Series, you could never expect the Pirates to pay for anything again.
Well, the reason that they have the lowest payroll is now they can afford all those garbage cans so that they can be a contender.
Now you know that they don't have to complain about empty seats in the stadium or being hurt and not being able to afford payroll. But in that same vein, like on an honest level, I don't think this passes. And I'll tell you why. There's rumors that the way the revenue split is shared is that they were trying to do a 50-50 split, and that was going to cap player salaries and in turn put in a salary cap. And I never really saw it talked a bunch. I mean, we've talked about doing some research on the salary cap. We brought in some numbers in the past. And why is baseball the only sport that doesn't have a salary cap? And it turns out it's been the Players Association. And I don't know if it's because baseball has such a larger network of players and having all the minor league teams, and then you have all of those players come together, where if you really got all the players to sit down and say, yo, we're not going to play, like the last player strike, then they're losing revenue on all kinds of levels. And so that's why baseball doesn't have a salary cap. And I just figured that it was their way of just saying like, yo, we're not going to give you a salary cap. We're going to get away from like some of the guaranteed contracts and things like that. That way they have an out. Like, but I know that's not true. The Mets still pay Bobby Bonilla, I believe. I mean, his last paycheck might have came up recently, but he hadn't played for a long time, and they were still paying him. So there are some ways where agents can get their players paid. Wow. And I don't know. Maybe that's what happens. Are they going to go ahead and push this through and get a salary cap started? Because you get it in once. The other thing, Matt, they don't play at all. Players don't get paid. I don't see how they would get paid if you don't play any games, especially because the owners already voted and they said yes to this proposal. Now, I don't know how fast it's going to move. By the time this gets out and you listen to it, it might have already been approved and you're shaking your head right now saying, well, this guy's an idiot. But right now, I'm thinking it doesn't get passed, and that's the reason why. They want to keep that so that you can have a gigantic Alex Rodriguez type contract for the top guys. And I mean, like, look at some of the NFL revenue sharing stuff and just the NBA. It really doesn't matter. Like, I mean, you're not going to have, like, it's only going to be the rarest of the rare athletes that get that top dollar. And I understand, like, some of the baseball guys, they make more money than LeBron. And LeBron complains about it all the time. Because I've heard him say stuff about the salary cap and how it's not fair for the NBA. But they have it marked that way because of the television contracts and you're not getting attendance. And guess what? They adjust that cap based on their revenues. So if this passes, you're kind of see a new guard. And then will we hear as much bitching as we do about the Pirates payroll? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think that it could be helpful to have that put into place, but I think it's looking at what does the most for the betterment of the players. And when you look at some of these baseball contracts, you know, when you're paying one guy $300 million, you don't have much money left for anybody else. So, you know, I think on one hand, there is a little bit of salary cap gymnastics that you have to do, because as you're looking at the rest of your team, if you're letting, you know, that top tier player go, then what are you replacing him with? One, and two, you know, what other pieces can you acquire? What do you have that you can help make yourself push for it? Because basically, with the way that I look at Major League Baseball, is you have your haves and you have your have-nots, and I think that's it. Specifically, more with baseball and in the NBA, is that they have it so that it's so top-heavy. With your top-tier teams are bound so much better that it's almost like you're having like an A team and like an A league and a B league, essentially.
And the NBA one, that's just because of the sport itself. It's not so much about like the revenue sharing or whatever. I think that's just more because there's a lot more of a size component. Like you have to be a certain height. You could be the best shooter, but only turn out to be 5'9". You're not going to be in the NBA because they have like guys that are 6'7" guarding you out on the edge. And there's just not that many guys that are that big and that fast. So whenever you have like two or three of them, I mean, look at it. It turned this league on its head whenever 3 all-star type players started to team up. It only took a team of 3. You get 3 of them together, they're unstoppable. And I think you could really look back to the Lakers like in the Shaq Kobe era. I mean, you had 2, plus they had like some perennial all-stars around them. And then the Celtics did it. And then LeBron noticed, and he said, yo, it only takes 3. Let me get 2 of my friends down here in South Beach, and we'll just all sign down there. And guess what? It worked out for them. You can have a team of 2, like Oklahoma City did with KD and Westbrook. Not enough. You only need 3, though. So you can take a team like Golden State, turn them into a dynasty, when historically they didn't win much at all. So it's just a different sport where, like in football, it's tougher to have. I know you have some of those teams that are just going to be in the playoffs every year or close to it because of their quarterback play. But look at Aaron Rodgers. If they don't build around you, you can put up the stats. Everyone can think you're the best, but you don't really get to prove it unless you have more of a team around you. They can't just throw 2 other guys on your team. And I mean, like baseball's the same way. You can have an awesome pitcher and an awesome hitter, spend all your money on them. I mean, look at what the Orioles had a few years ago. Everyone thought, oh, they're going to turn the corner, and never did. Like, you have to have a consistent investment and build that, have guys coming in, young guys in the bullpen, things like that. So it would be interesting to see if it would even shift the sport to, like you said, from the haves to haves not. Right now, the haves can just pay more. Let's be honest. You can make a bunch of misses on scouting if you have enough money to reload and buy another contract and shove that guy in AAA or whatever. I mean, you could have the most expensive AAA roster just of guys that didn't work out. Look at what the Yankees have done. They don't have a good farm team. You look at what teams they usually pilfer. Like the Marlins from back in the day, the Braves had a great farm system, and then some of the other teams where they were just signing guys. I mean, you look at like Mark Teixeira and stuff, Braves trade for him. They know they're not going to be able to pay to keep him. Not after the TBS deals and stuff changed over the time. Then the Yankees are right there to take the best. Like, yo, Pirates, we're going to take a couple of your guys every couple of years. Marlins, come on up. Like, they just feed off that. That's their farm system. And that's what makes it different. So I'm surprised the owners even signed this for that reason. Although I think that they're looking at what the NFL has done, and they're saying, wow, I guess it really doesn't matter what top teams they are, as long as you're able to market your players and get your stars out there in the social media age. But I don't know if they have enough to get it done. But I know we're going super long on this. Do you have anything else to add about baseball?
No, I mean, I want to see them. I want to see it get through because that's one more thing that it gets us back to normal. I think I'm done with this quarantine stuff, and getting our sports back is definitely going to be one of the things that's going to get people back out into some kind of routine, some regularity.
That's true. Let's get into the high tempo. My high tempo, though, is going to probably upset you because looking just across the board, Jim Harbaugh put out a memo last week. Let me see if I have the key details. It was like a 2-page letter he decides to write. And then you go ahead and just look at that letter. And he has a lot of good suggestions about letting people just declare for the NFL draft. And if they don't get drafted, they come back like an automatic. I think he's had an automatic 5th year. They can sign kind of like any other sport in college you can sign. Hockey, you can sign. Baseball, you can sign. But you get into basketball and football, like, no way. So just let them sign with an agent. I mean, it's already a sham. We see what happens with like the Kansas. They gave Kansas 5 letters of misconduct or whatever, like level 1, like the most egregious last week, and they had just gave him to Louisville. We talked about do something. We're not even going to talk about that because nothing's going to happen. Nothing happened with Arizona. Nothing happened with LSU when their guy was caught on wiretap.
They were just bringing up with Zion that they're saying that it's being speculated that he was being steered toward a Nike/Adidas school, and that he was receiving improper benefits, and that they're investigating that now. So,
well, that wasn't even just an allegation. His former agent is suing for lost money. He said that he was told that if he steered him to Duke, they would get this much money, and then he would get this much money of the other contract. So that might just be hearsay, or he might even, I don't know if he has those documented, or how he would even be able to prove that. Because a lot of that stuff, I would imagine if he was getting paid, it would be under the table. The agent wouldn't have a contract to that. Like, that would be crazy if he pulled out like an extra contract that had like Duke notes on it. But we'll see. I mean, look at some of the stuff I got it mixed up a couple weeks ago about the Michigan State coaches because I couldn't keep straight which Michigan State coach was under allegations. But I mean, like, look at what happens. Like, you don't have the data to back it up. It just gets thrown out on the state level, and then it doesn't go anywhere. So I want to see that happen. And then some of the other ones where I think he admitted, like the student athlete, where you get into, and I think this might have been expanded on later, so it might not have been in the actual letter if you look it up. But what I was seeing is he wants to do a student athlete where you come in, you take your core courses while you play football. So, like, let's say you're going to be, we can use Marcus Lattimore, the South Carolina running back, is a great example. He comes in, he studies like his core courses, kind of like a general studies type course, leaves early for the NFL. I think he had got injured twice. So they basically told him, like, yo, you can't go back, or he might even, I don't know if he had to go back for a senior season or whatever, but like, let's just say he left early after his junior year, I believe. Now he gets to the NFL. Because of his injuries, he never can compete at the same level. So he's done. He ends up back at South Carolina. The NCAA wasn't even letting him do anything because of his status with the school. They thought that would be permissible benefits if they had a hanger-on helping recruit. So he's done. Under this program, now you can go back and actually pick your major, and they're going to pay for it. Like, that's covered in the scholarship. Even if you leave early, like, you got your exposure, you got all this. And I think that's a great idea because you always hear about athletes saying, like, yo, I'm going to major in this their freshman year. And then, like, by their junior year, it's like general studies because they get into that and then they realize, like, yo, I'm missing these required courses because they're only offered at this time and I can't take it. And that's a consistent thing that happens. And so I feel bad for them. And I want that to be something that they look at. But the crazy thing is that Harbaugh's pointing it out. For as big as he is, it might happen. Some of these might get done just because of his name. But first, like I was mentioning, high schools across the country, it's a mixed bag, high schools and colleges. The California state system said that they're not going back. And that doesn't mean Cal and UCLA. That means like some of the other, like San Jose State, I think is a part of that, and some of the other Mountain West Conference schools. So if they don't go back in the fall, what happens to the Mountain West football season? Like, I don't see how you can say, yo, we're going to come back, but it's only going to be the football players. Like, everyone else is off campus just because it's not safe. And so what happens if James Franklin already came out and said he would play with the teams that want to play? It's like if Penn State decided that they're going to go back on campus, but Rutgers doesn't because they're too close to New York, they would just have Rutgers not play for 1 year or whatever, however many years it takes for them to get ready, which I think is crazy. Could you imagine if they had like a weird unbalanced schedule where all your tough games just don't play? And
I think that it's very beneficial because I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on states. That if you're leaving it up to the individual colleges, be able to make that determination, and you have ones that really feel strongly. Like you look at Georgia right now, that they've reopened the state back up. They're going to be ready to go, July 1st to be able to possibly start doing some organized activities, be ready to have their scrimmages in come August and do all the stuff that they need to do. They're going to be able to play. If you look at the surrounding states, and if they're having issues with not allowing them, if you're an athlete, you may, and you're a Division II, Division I athlete, and you're looking at a possible scholarship, that may be enough to cause your family to move into Georgia so that you can get that exposure. Because if you miss that year out, you look at all these spring athletes right now that had their senior years wiped out, that maybe they weren't on someone's radar, that now they've completely lost out on some possible scholarship opportunities because they had no opportunity to display what they could do in their senior year.
And you make a great point, because I think Twitter today, and this just one big company, they said that if their employees want to keep working remote, like they don't have to come back to work. Like it's been working for them. You can just work remote the entire time. And that's one big thing out there in San Francisco. Like you work for some of the Silicon Valley ones, they have stories about all these programmers and stuff living out of their cars. Why wouldn't you? Like you said, if you're a parent and you're living in California and they say, yo, you get to work remote, take that salary and move to a state that's open where your kid can go to high school and start playing some sports. Like what would keep you there? I mean, it's crazy, but it could be a thing that happens, and we'll see if they just start a trend where a lot of companies now are more flexible with this. And another thing that might get pushed through, baseball has the extended playoffs. What if college football is forced to do that? Because there's a good chance, just right now, I know it's super early, but there's a good chance that some states, like you had said, are back. And there's going to be unbalanced schedules, and there's going to be unbalanced records. How do you fill out bowl games? Georgia might have 12 games. They might end up 8-4. What if a team only plays 4 games? They're 4-0. Like, what do you do? Or like they play 8 games. They're 6-2. Well, is 6-2 better than 8-4? You don't know. Who do they lose to?
If they're playing the demands of the SEC schedule, then you get a bump. Maybe you play a couple SEC games. There you go.
And that's going to be the big thing, because like in the Big Ten, if the teams that come back are the ones that that are going to be coming back, the Ohio States, the Penn States, the Michigans, I would assume Michigan plays. If Penn State and Ohio State play, I just don't see how they would sit it out. Like they would do. So the stadium's big enough, you can spread out. Some of the other teams like that have a smaller stadium, maybe you can't get that done. Like a Northwestern, you're in Chicago. It might not be worth it to you. But for these other football factories, if other teams are playing, they're going to play. And then what if your schedule is just a bunch of juggernaut teams? Then you have like an NFL type schedule. Like I don't even know how they would pick it. You would almost be forced into an extended playoffs, and if that was such a hit, they would keep it. Like if they decided like, yo, we have to do a 16-team playoff this year, and ratings were through the roof, next year you better believe that 16-team playoff is going to stay. And so that's my dream, Matt. I hope that happens. I hope things are so messed up between states because it looks like that's going to happen. And I'm not talking about people getting sick. I'm saying the opening times, because you know that that's going to happen. You're going to have someone that says, oh, well, we're not going to start our season until October. Or, you know what, we're going to start ours on time. And then you go from there. I mean, the Steelers released their schedule. It's our next topic. And so everything that we talked about came true. They had the full schedule, started that second week of September. Of course, a Monday night game against the Giants, kick it off. So luckily, a game against the Giants, which you have a young quarterback. Steelers, hopefully Ben's back, have a good chance, even though it's at New York, to get a win under their belt. But just looking at the crossover games and some of the out-of-conference games, you have the Redskins, you got the Bills again, the Colts, the Cowboys, the Eagles, Titans, Texans, Broncos, and Giants. Oh, I missed Jaguars. No top teams, Matt. No juggernauts. They're not playing the Chiefs. I mean, you're not playing Tampa Bay. Used to be New England.
The Bills.
The Bills. I'm saying, just in terms of like the top teams that it would expect a loss, I would expect them to potentially play the Bills. If Ben's there, why not to a toss them, like a toss-up? I know it's at Buffalo, but like some of the other teams, it's not like you're playing teams that were juggernauts last year, teams that have like an identity. So I could easily see 10 wins with this schedule. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'd messaged you before about it, and I said there's no reason they can't. They aren't a playoff team with this, and I think you hit the nail on the head. That the only thing that could throw a wrench into it's Ben. You know, if something happens to Roethlisberger, I think that could really put them in a bad situation, especially when you're facing these defensive focused teams like the Titans, like the Texans, that could possibly present some problems.
I would say if Ben's there, I have a good feeling about 11 wins. I'm saying if he doesn't get hurt, you play the whole season. I mean, the roster hasn't changed much. They were very close to a playoff team. They just didn't have him. If he was played last year, they're in the playoffs. You don't have a couple of the games that came down to the wire that they ended up losing. This year, I mean, like I'd say 11 wins because I would guarantee 2 losses would be because he has a bonehead game where he has 4 interceptions or something. And so then, of course, you have the Ravens. You'll probably split with them if you're lucky, or just take 2 losses there. And then maybe the Browns or Bengals get one. I think if Ben's there, I just don't see them splitting with either of them coming in, just because they would have to take that next step. The Bengals and Browns both have to take that next step. You have young quarterbacks. The Bengals with a rookie, I just think that's a sweep. I hope I'm right. I just don't know if you're going to get a young quarterback. And I know they say he plays against the SEC defenses or whatever. It's just a whole different beast in the NFL to come in and get it done. And I think he's going to be a great quarterback. I mean, it's just tough to get that right off the bat whenever you don't have a consistent running game to just rely on, like Ben had when he came into the league. So that's my picks. I think that you're looking at double digits. I think you definitely hit the playoffs no matter what if Ben plays. If he's out, I think, well, we have the extended playoffs, so I don't want to say the wild card, but I would say that would be the ceiling. Like, you're going to be playing in that wild card weekend, and you're probably one of the last teams in, so you probably get one of the last draws if he's out, because that's exactly where they would have been last year, and they didn't make anything to make it better. I just think that they have an easier schedule this year.
Oh, I definitely think the schedule's easier, and I think there's one other thing that's not being factored in right now is playing at Cleveland, playing at Cincy, and playing at Buffalo. Those are all late season games. So this is where you're looking at possibly having weather play into it, that if you don't have Ben, you can still possibly win those games based off of playing defense and just playing keep away. Maybe.
I don't see why not. The games that are tough are like the Titans, where you might just get the ball run down your throat. And the one thing that I've been talking to some other fans around the league, the Steelers still have a defense, a secondary that looks like it hasn't been addressed. So some fans are excited. They're like, oh, we're going to tear the Steelers defense up. Like, they haven't gotten any better in the secondary. I mean, you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, but you didn't bring in any corners. You didn't bring in any speed. So what are you looking at? And so that gets me back to the points. Like, okay, good point. I know that that's something we've been talking about. We wanted addressed. It hasn't happened. Could they do something in the trade again? Like, I would hate for them. I mean, maybe it works out. You just decide, you know what? We're just not even going to try to draft that position. We're just going to trade around like we did for Fitzpatrick. Find someone that's an all-pro that is on a contract and bring them in. I mean, we joked about, I don't even think it was a joke, just bringing in Jalen Ramsey too last year. Like, could you imagine if that had gotten done? And then Ben comes back, and then you have like a great defense all around with some young studs. Like, why not?
That would have been nice.
So, I don't know. I'm a little bit optimistic. I'm worried that it isn't going to start up. I mean, you hear all the, I don't want to say fear mongering, but you hear all the stuff about the testing and how they need to be testing for at least fevers and things outside the stadium. And to me, that just screws up the logistics. Where you're trying to bring fans in. I know it's not that many. Like, please bring back hockey, like I said last week. Bring it back. And then that way, we can get a test run in June or July of 2,000 people in the stands. That if you need to test fevers or whatever, you can get that done. You have how many gates, you open them early and tell people like, yo, if you're in a lower section, you got to get in this time. If you're in the upper section, you got to get in this time. But we're starting right back up at the playoffs. Like, let's go. You know how pumped I would be if they announced that hockey was coming back at the start of June or like middle of June, right into the playoffs? Like, that would be more exciting than baseball. Like, the Pirates have no chance. I mean, even our other team, the Tigers, friends of the show. Like, I'm not going to be too excited about them. They haven't even rebuilt. They were tanking, Matt. You're tanking. You don't tank and then come back in a shortened season and win it all, unless they're, like you said, they're following the Redskins model. They're just waiting. So, I don't know. You got anything else on the NFL stuff?
Well, this is a crazy situation. So maybe if you're a gambling person, maybe you put some money on the Redskins. Maybe that is going to be a slip-up game for the Steelers. Redskins will be hot, dealing with controversy.
Matt, you forgot one thing. They have an Ohio State quarterback. Ohio State quarterbacks are not successful in the NFL. Have they even had anyone that went to Ohio State win a playoff game?
I don't know that.
I don't know that either. I'm just saying, I don't remember a lot of Ohio State quarterbacks ever being successful, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was none that have been successful in the playoffs, at least no Super Bowl winners. Let alone, I mean, maybe just one playoff game. You'd think you'd get lucky sometime. For such a great program, Matt. You know who else has one? Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow might have more playoff wins than Ohio State quarterbacks. And they had the same coach for a while, Matt. I'm just throwing that out there. Let's get into Final Bell. I know we're trying to keep it shorter. That reminds me. I forgot to put it on here, but it really just made me pissed off, dude. The Michael Jordan stuff we've been talking about, ESPN did a whole thing on Michael Jordan's baseball career and how it wasn't as bad as you remember. Dude, he batted 202. 202. I thought, oh my gosh. Like, what was that, AAA? Was that AA? And then it was AA. So then I thought, oh, that's bad. because you're not even close to getting called up. And yet they ran an article about how he was going to make the majors. Like, you batted 202, you're going to make the majors? Like, yo, give me a break. You're not making the majors. So then I thought, what about my man Tim Tebow? Because he did the same thing. He came into the league, and so I got his stats here, Matt. His first minor league season, he batted 220. Now, that was at a lower league. So then I thought, oh, well, I mean, yeah, you're getting back. That was the same excuse they gave Jordan, like, yo, it's his first time back. It might not have caught up with him. So then I thought, well, let me look and see a Tim versus Jordan at the same level. Tebow batted 274 in AA, Matt. 72 points higher than Michael Jordan. And yet they had said Tim Tebow had no chance. Like, this guy's never getting to the majors. Like, no way. Like, look at him out there. It's embarrassing. But yet, 30 years later, they decide, oh, Michael Jordan, he 100% would have made it. Like, you know what they even said in the article? Like, teams were just blowing fastballs by him. And so then he started to get some hits, which boosted his average. He never hit the off-speed stuff ever. They said, like, once they started to do that, Jordan looked like a fool out there. Like, Tim Tebow had started to hit that stuff. And he was consistently hitting it. When they threw him fastballs, Tebow was hitting home runs. I don't even know how many he had, but I remember, like, that was a big thing. And they even talked about the Mets bringing him up. He had 18 home runs, Tim Tebow did. But in AAA, once you take that step up, his batting average dropped to 163. So he got closer. I mean, I don't see Michael Jordan doing any better than that. Like, that probably would have been where Jordan was, and then that would have ended it. Like, hey, man, you gave it a good run. And I think he saw the writing on the wall and was like, yo, if I'm not going to hit AA pitching, like, that's okay. But don't go ahead and try to bring it in like, yo, he was going to make the majors. Like, because they're trying to push this narrative that he's the greatest athlete of all time. He's no Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson and even Deion Sanders were doing the same exact stuff. Plus, they were playing football, which is harder on the body. Like, come on. I know, great, he was great at basketball. Like, I'm not saying, like, I'm not denying that he might be the greatest basketball player of all time. And in my opinion, he is. But I'm not going to say, like, he's the greatest athlete because it takes a different skill set. You have to be super athletic to do multiple sports. And he couldn't get it done.
Yep.
So that's my standing on it. Like, if anything, it's just more embarrassing that you try to push the narrative that he was. Like, yo, we get it. He's the best basketball player. Why does he have to be the best athlete? Why do you have to try to make him something better than what he was? If he was great at it, he would have been great at it. Like, at least stick around. Like, Bo Jackson was in the majors. Deion Sanders was in the majors. Then they also played. I mean, if Bo didn't get hurt, he probably was a Hall of Famer. I mean, Deion Sanders, he's in the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's where the discussion stops. I don't think there's any other multi-sport guys off the top of my head that played on that level in college and in the pros for as long as they did. And unfortunately, Bo got hurt, so you can never really have that big-time discussion of, like, who was better. We'll never know. So, I mean, that's my thing. I mean, could you imagine Bo Jackson got hurt at football and then still played Major League Baseball after they told him he'd never be an athlete again? He played after his hip injury. He wasn't even supposed to be able to play, yet he was able to twist his hips and still hit home runs and stuff. Like, ridiculous. Like, it's just unbelievable. So that was my thing that really, it stood out to me. I was like, oh my, I gotta see this. Like, I can't believe it. They're doing my man Tim Tebow wrong. Tim Tebow also has a playoff win, Matt, like I mentioned earlier.
Well, I don't know that they have to push that narrative that he would have 100% made the majors, just because Jordan in the majors would have sold ticket money. You know, just like they're talking about with Tebow. I think if they pulled him up to the Mets bench, I think that he would draw. So they would it would be a spectacle, and they could make money off of that. But I think it's still impressive that you playing at such a high level and then transition to another sport. And even if he only cleared, the minors, that's still an impressive feat to walk away from one professional sport and just step into another arena. I'd be curious to see, and I don't know that many athletes would be willing to do that, but just to see how many people could leave their primary sport and pick up a secondary sport and be successful.
I mean, wasn't Russell Wilson doing it for baseball? He was trying to do pitching. I think he was at a couple spring trainings. I don't think he ever went much farther than that.
Yeah, and Kyler Murray potentially.
Yeah, I mean, like, even just looking at it, like, I don't know why this is split up, but 7 years in the majors, Dion was batting .271. Like, I get it, Jordan might have made the majors, but like, he's batting more better than you in the majors that you did at Double-A. Like, it's just not a discussion. Like, I don't understand why someone has to try to just like, okay, we get it. You like Jordan. You don't have to try to like make him be the best at everything. It's just weird. Like, what does that get you done for you? Like, are you Michael Jordan writing that article? And you're like, listen, son, I'd have made that majors. Like, I could see if he was writing it under a pen name, but like some random sports writer, like, bro, it's okay. It's okay. He has his hardware. He played in the NBA. He's great. Everyone still loves him. I mean, they're even giving out Charles Barkley grief for calling him out as a bad owner and stuff like that, and they're bringing up that bad blood. It's like, why? Sports go away, and then they're like, you know what? Jordan, that will get us clicks. I still haven't watched the show, by the way. I just know that was like breaking. It was like a breaking story the one day, and I thought, how is this news? I can just do a search for a couple of other athletes around that same time, like I had said, Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson, and know that, this isn't true. It's just not true. So that's my final bell. You have anything else, Matt?
Nope. Just continue to check out the website because we've been making some improvements. And
yeah, hopefully everything's going smooth with that. Well, so far it has been. Letting people sign up, create their own user accounts, do comments and stuff like that, and doing some test runs with that. Had some good success so far. Nothing breaking. Trying to get that in place for football season. And I had some people ask about our Madden talk. I'll be honest, I don't actually have the game. So right now, I am locked out. I had like a trial of that EA Access thing. So I only had it for a month. And so basically, I had it for a couple of weeks. You heard me play it. And then I'm on trial mode. I'm locked out. And I was going to just get it. Like, it's like $30 a year or something like that. And this isn't a pitch for the product. But I don't want to buy a new game because sports games lose their money so fast. It just annoys me. But I'm like, I'll do that. $30 a year is half the cost of me buying Madden regularly if I bought it new. But I was waiting for them to put the NHL game on. NHL 20. They haven't done it yet. Normally they have it in like June or something, like to promote the playoffs. But I'm waiting. So you're going to have to hold out on some of the Madden talk, hearing about my guy. And so I apologize. I have been playing around with Axis Football. So if you're interested in that, let me know. It's a PC game. I think that it's available for Xbox and PS4. But it's using fake teams. They don't have the NFL license, but there are mods. I've been playing a college football mod. I sent Matt some pictures. Very realistic. Top notch. Like Michigan crushed Florida State. I mean, the Willie Taggart years were very low. So I'll just say that very realistic in that regard. Maybe not so much of the gameplay, but we'll see. Maybe I'll throw up some videos of that. That's all I have. You have anything else?
No.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.